You are listening to the Main Event Moto podcast.
It's time for number 169, Joe.
169.
How you doing?
So good, brother.
It's going to be a fun show, I think.
Yeah.
I'm excited. Something I've been wanting to do for a long time, and we just did it. So, cat's out of the bag. This isn't a before the interview thing. This is we did the interview post thing. Right?
That's right.
I felt like I said that pretty bad, but you get the gist. Huge shout out to Fly Racing, Mika Metals, No Toil, EMT Racing, Viral Moto, All Meat Creations, Motosport.com, All American Chevy of Killeen, Screen Printing Done, Guts Racing, Scott USA, DRS Suspension and Race Tech, and Blen Zoll. Joe, this is going to be pretty fun. Well, it was fun. It's done.
It was fun.
What do you think about that? We did. Okay, well, I should probably tell everyone what we did. So I've been wanting to do this thing for a while. Calling it. Did we settle on Amateur Spotlight? Is that lame?
It sounds about right.
Sounds about lame, right? But that's what we're going to call it.
Sounds about lame.
With Cooper Webb. So I've been wanting to do this thing where I take a rider and start from the beginning and just go through their amateur career only and just go through the stories that people don't know as well. And people that lived in this time with Webb on his 50s, 60s, they know all these stories. For them, it's nothing. But for a lot of people listening in, you know Cooper Webb as the Supercross champion. You don't know him as a 5-year-old kid racing his PW50 and then a 10-year-old kid winning Loretta Lynn's against AC in a rivalry beginning. And then, getting turned down by team after team after team, which we get into. I just wanted to go through this timeline and go through some of these stories that I knew a little bit about and bring them to light and kind of follow this calendar. And, dude, it was pretty good. I'm very happy Coop did this, and I learned some stuff that I didn't know. Joe?
Yeah.
What do you think about... I mean, we all know he rides with a chip on his shoulder, right? We've all said that how many years? I remember doing this show the year he won the outdoors on the 250. Remember he had the broken wrist?
Yep.
And he just had that chip attitude, and he's carried that forever. And you've kind of heard little rumblings on why, AC this and didn't get the ride from the teams that. Well, you don't really know like the full extent of those stories. And going through those and hearing that, it makes perfect sense now why the guy's been kind of bitter the whole time, right?
Yeah, totally.
I mean, how do you have that much success and get overlooked over and over and over? I mean, bad timing, I guess. I don't know. I'm still baffled. You'd have to be there in that time. Like, you'd have to go and ask Geico and Pro Circuit, like, why did you really pass on this guy? And ask them, because maybe they had a different point of view. But in hindsight, man, some people blew it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
for
bad.
Sure.
And I think that drove him all the way through to being what he is today. I think he still has it. I mean, he had a number 1 on his plate this year, and he still seemed bitter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it was good. We talk about, I mean, we kind of follow along his Loretta Lynn's career. We go through, I mean, I have it printed right here in front of me. He wins his first ever Loretta Lynn's title at the age of 6. So you're thinking, oh, this guy's on his way. But then there's a lot of goofy stuff along the way, and that just kind of throws the story left and right. And then it all ends with him signing with Star Yamaha and turning pro at Hangtown when he was pretty young. And I don't know, I thought it was pretty rad. But again, I come away with this thing going, man, some people really blew it. That's what I'm left with. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Yeah, it was good. And I had a good talk to him about all this stuff. We get into the AC rivalry, not heavy because it really wasn't that heavy. He makes it pretty simple on understanding where that rivalry came from. A lot of weird things for him. He was a Honda amateur rider like Barsha all the way through. He was a Red Bull Honda guy, and then didn't stay with Honda when he turned big bike, which to me is weird. But he explains that whole story, and yeah, it was cool. It was cool to do this. And I just wanted to give you guys a little something different. Joe and I would like to do a few more of these throughout the summer. That way we can fill you in on the off weeks. We're going to cover the outdoors if they happen. God, I hope they happen. But there'll be some weeks off probably from now through the summer and into the fall. And we want to be able to bring you guys some creative content. So, are we going to stick with this? Amateur Spotlight? Is that okay? Or can you really quickly come up with something cooler before we finish this thing?
No, I think it is cool.
Oh, you think it's cool?
Yeah.
I thought it was a lame name that you were going to make fun of because I mentioned it and you just kind of never say anything. So
the name's fine. Amateur Spotlight. Keep it nice and clean. It is what it is.
Okay,
Easy.
so this is Main Event Moto Amateur Spotlight with Cooper Webb.
Yeah.
And then who do you want to do next? Who are we hunting down next? Cooper was easy. He's my buddy. He's owed me this for a long time, so he was easy. But who do you?
I don't know.
Who do you want? Who do you want next?
That's a tough one. I wasn't prepared for this question. I don't know. Who is even on the list of possibilities?
Depends on which way you want to go.
Tease it out there.
Maybe I shouldn't tease it out to you. Maybe we should have the listeners tell us who they want next.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And I think for the most part, we should be able to get these guys. There's a couple that might not play ball.
Yeah.
But for the most part, why don't you guys do this? All right, I'm gonna post on Instagram like I always do a picture of probably Cooper as I'm gonna find an embarrassing photo of him as a kid. I'm gonna put it up, and why don't you guys tell me who you want next? And we'll look at the list. We'll start knocking some of these things out because they're cool, and it's interesting to hear these stories of these little kids who end up growing up to be superstars and knowing. I mean, wouldn't you love to know right now, Tom Brady in high school? Like, what was high school football like for you? Were you a tall dude that couldn't run very fast then too? Were you a goober back then that became a freak when you got older? So let us know who, and we'll do some more of these things. I think they're pretty cool, and I would like to diversify. Cooper was like the perfect guy to start this because he had success, but he also had some non-successful moments. So I'd obviously like to get to the guys who just crushed it, but I'd also like to get to the guys who didn't, who became badass when they became pros and maybe didn't have a good amateur career, just to show you all different ways to become a star in this sport. I thought he was a great one to start, though. So let us know what you want to do, and we'll do some more of these things. But overall, it was great. Cooper, thank you very much for doing this. And huge shout out to the sponsors again: Fly Racing, Mika Metals, No Toil, EMT Racing, Viral Moto, Olmi Creations. Thank you guys. Motosport.com, All American Chevy of Killeen, Screen Printing Done, Guts Racing, Scott USA, DRS Suspension with the Race Tech, and Blendzall. Man, when I look at this list, Joe, I just get fired up, man. We got good sponsors. Thank you guys so much for doing what you do. And this is episode 169, Amateur Spotlight, I guess, right?
That's right.
Okay, with Cooper Webb. Here we go. All right, Coop, let's go back to day one, first race, if you can remember it. First race, where was it at? How did it go? Did you not get last? Because I got last at my first race. How'd it go?
My first race, man, it was a little track. It was this track called Kinley in eastern North Carolina. Just a very local track. I don't even think it's still there today. But actually, ironically enough, my first ever race, I ended up winning it. I think there was only 3 of us, but still.
Came away with a dub.
Yeah. It was going to be a podium.
You had a guaranteed podium, so that's good. That's a good way to start it. But hey, to get the win. And is that on a P dub? Is that where you started?
Yeah, I was on a Yamaha PW50. I was at that time I was 5. I started riding when I was 4, but the end up being 4, and then my first race was when I was 5 years old. And
did you win by default because the other 2 were just squirrels, or
I think we were all just
all right.
It was my first race. I will say one was a girl because I remember my dad was pretty set on me needing to beat her, and then I think we were all just beginners. We were just maybe the first race of the season, and just going for it.
That's awesome. So then that's end of 4, getting into it at 5. The first result that pops up on the Racer X Loretta Vault is you in the 4 to 6 class. So were you just P-dub all the way through that year? Is that all you knew at that time?
Yeah, I'm still small, but I was a really, really small kid. Even on a PW50, I never was able to touch the ground. I had to use starting blocks on it. So I was pretty small. And then, so that started when I was 5 racing. And then I actually tried for Loretta's when I was 5. And at the time, my dad didn't know that you could do more than one regional. So we did, the first regional, and I think I got like 8th, which was just, the cutoff on the East Coast is usually 7.
Yeah.
And so we ended up going to Loretta's and as an alternate, and I was able to do practice, and I never got in. But, I remember going and watching and I guess, doing practice and just getting the experience. And apparently I don't really remember it, but I guess I had told my dad the last moto I was watching the 50 class, and I was sitting on the fence, and I told him, I said, I'm going to win this next year. And he was like, nah.
He's like, look, buddy, you didn't even get in this year. Like, let's just try to get in next year. And you're like, no, look, I'm going to win. And you did. So 4-6. Sure, you come back 4-6. And I'm looking up the results, and I'm laughing because second place is RJ Hampshire. And I'm like, really, you two little 6-year-olds. I mean, did you even know him then? Because he's Florida kid. So did you know him? I mean,
no, not really. I mean, it's funny, like you said, how it all kind of, when you look at old results, you see names and you don't really know who they are. I remember, I think that was my first time ever racing RJ was then. And then, you know, we started racing more when I started doing some stuff in Florida and stuff. But yeah, that was my first time ever seeing him and, you know, meeting him up there on the podium and all that good stuff. So, yeah, it's kind of funny to look back and see, you know, how it works out.
It's weird, yeah, when you see their names and the results. And I mean, there's a couple names I looked up when I looked at your results of guys who looked pretty legit, and then I've never heard of them. They never turned pro. They didn't even go past like 80s. I don't even know what happened. It's the weirdest thing if you go down memory lane. Now, I know it's hard to remember back when you're 4, 5, 6, all these years, but did you know what you were even doing out there? Were you like on the gate, I want to win, or were you just looking for the birds and squirrels and you happen to be really good at this?
I feel like I was pretty competitive even as a kid. I mean, I was definitely, you know, goofing off with my buddies and playing with play dirt bikes and stuff like that. But I mean, I remember when it was time to race, even back then, it was, you know, like, hey, we're here to do well. And I mean, I practiced quite a bit. Like, my dad owns a surf shop, and he built me a little 50 track, like, besides the surf shop, and I would go out there and just moto like crazy. And I don't know, I remember just as a kid too, he would always try to get me to try to like jump the braking bumps on a PW50, and that was like something that I was always trying to do.
Rhythm section into the corner.
Yeah, and we ended up like he finally got a tractor. I think the first 50 track he built was like with a shovel, and then he finally got some buddies to load him up with some dirt and a tractor. And I remember vaguely that at that point, you know, the jumps then turned into just 2 piles, because that's where the skid steers dumped the piles. And he shaped them up, and I don't know, I just remember I would break a lot of frames trying to do the doubles that he built and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, I was obviously in it to have fun, but I felt like from a young age I was, you know, trying to do well. And I mean, I always enjoyed
naturally
it,
a competitive streak naturally.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I grew up like playing all kinds of different sports, you know, so I think that's just kind of what I was used to, was that competitiveness.
And what about your dad then? Did he ride too, or where'd the riding background come from?
Yeah, so I guess, I mean, he was actually a pro surfer at one point and then started shaping surfboards. And basically he always was into motocross, like just for fun, never, you know, anything too crazy. Raced, like he told me, at an intermediate level, I guess. And basically when he chose to pursue surfing back, you know, whenever it was in the 70s. So then when I was born, he still surfed, you know, for fun. And it got to the point where he would go out and surf, and then everyone's hassling him trying to get a free surfboard or a sale on a board. And he just said he kind of got sick of dealing with customers as he's trying to surf for fun. So he got a dirt bike just to, you know, enjoy something else and, you know, get a little escape and some exercise and stuff like that. And yeah, he took me the one day and I fell in love. So that's kind of where it all stemmed from.
Seems how it goes, or it seems that it goes that way. Sorry, that you put a kid on a dirt bike day one and it's on. Like I don't know many that will do it and then be like, nah, I'm not into it. It's usually like, okay, so where and when are we going again? So again, for you though, you go to Loretta's at 6, you win. So obviously now, like, I mean, you know it's a big race. There's tons of people around. You get to go on the podium. All those little feelings for a little kid. Mm-hmm. Obviously, it's motivating to come back the next year. But if I'm looking at these results correctly, bro, It was a struggle for a little bit. What happened?
Yeah, it was a struggle. I'm not too sure. I think one of the things I remember being a little tough was we didn't really get any sponsorship as far as like bikes or anything when I did do well there on the PW, which I mean, hey, you're on a PW, so you can't expect much.
Right.
But
Is that why you ended up on a Plini?
yeah, I don't know what the prices or anything like that, but I know like Cobra, wasn't willing to really do much, and I think Polini gave us like some discounted stuff or whatever, and
right.
I struggled on those. They didn't keep running very good, and I think that was that phase of where the Cobras were really the bike to be on, and the KTMs were pretty good then too, and then it was like the Polini was trying, but just wasn't that great.
30th on your 7-year-old year. Not good, Coop.
No, I don't even remember that year. I can't even tell you what happened.
Let's just blame it on mud and bike problems. We'll just blame it on that. But the next year, 8-year-old year, you're on a 65 and a Cobra 50. Looks like both Cobras, right? Yeah?
Yeah, I actually was. Yeah.
That didn't go either. That didn't go very good either. 36th in both classes.
I remember a local dealership was helping us out with one of the Cobras, and then I was on a KTM 65 the whole time, and then I did get approached actually to ride the Cobra a little bit. I think I'm pretty sure. I don't remember what I raced there. I might have raced the Cobra. I don't remember. I remember I was back and forth on the Cobra and the KTM, and to be honest, I don't know what I raced, but I do know that it was I wasn't making the cuts on the 50 class.
It wasn't looking good for a bright. The future didn't look great, but
no,
it didn't.
No,
but okay, so let's move on to where things look a little better. So 7 and 9-year-old year. You qualify for both classes, 65, 7, and 9, and the 7 to 11, which I got to imagine is hard because you're going against 10 and 11-year-olds.
Yeah.
But you got a top 10 that year. You're on a KTM, so it looks like now you're starting to cook again.
Yeah, no, it was cool. It was that year I felt like I found my year, or I found my groove a little bit more. I really gelled with the 65s, and I think at that time it was more like, hey, if the KTM was the bike to be on, for the 65s, and those things stock were just so dang good. So I think that's where it was maybe a little more level playing field. And my 9-year-old year there, I remember in the 7 and 9 class, I went 1:34.1. Came in hot, but second moto, first lap, we had a gas cap vapor lock. So that was,
that's unfortunate.
That was the 34th. Yeah, so still got 9th, and then I remember that year in the 7-11. I don't know my actual result, but I remember actually doing pretty well from what I can remember against the older kids, and I remember being a little intimidated, but I'm pretty sure I did all right. But I think I ended up like 9th with that 1:34.1 or something like that.
Yep, 9th in that class. At that time too. This is when things are starting to feel a bit more real, because 50s are like they're glorified pit bikes.
Yeah.
But now you're shifting and clutching and all that stuff. Was that a good transition for you? Was that a positive, or did that take a while?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, from what I can remember, like my dad had me on, even when I was on a 50, like he always had me riding like a TTR 90 as a pit bike, and those kind of stuff as pit bikes. So I think shifting wasn't a problem for me, and then the clutch was something that I think I figured out pretty easily. And then even as like a 7-year-old, I think we dabbled around on the 65. So you could tell that's where I think just having that time on that bike, and like I said, I whether bike problems or whatever the reason was, it seemed like the 50 years weren't my best years. So I'm not sure exactly. Like I said, I think the spending 7-year-old year, 8-year-old, 9-year-old, that's 3 years on that bike, which was the same bike, the KTM throughout all those years,
right.
And just kind of learning it and being relatively about the same size, I think was just
and grow into it a little bit, but being on the same bike and learning that stuff early, then growing into it, obviously it's going to pay off.
Main event moto.
There's a reason I run DRS suspension and Race Tech hard parts with Mika Metal's chains, bars, and sprockets on Evans 65. First off, DRS suspension settings work everywhere. I haven't changed a clicker since I put them on. Maybe it's the internals from Race Tech that give it that extra something.
American-made products with a 100% guarantee. You don't see that every day.
Yeah, the DRS Race Tech combo works for me. And what can I say about Mika?
First off, they've been with us since the beginning.
The quality of their bars is top of the line, and Mika is the only chain and sprocket combo I run. Motoheads, get with the program. It's DRS suspension, Race Tech, Mika Metals.
Say it again.
It's DRS suspension, Race Tech, Mika Metals. Is that good, Joe?
Yeah.
I love when NorCal companies take the world by storm. Guts Racing seat covers and no-toil filters are made right here at home, but their products travel the country and world on some of the baddest dudes' bikes in pro racing.
Who runs Guts?
Too many factory teams to list, Joe.
Who runs No Toil?
Well, it's the only filter Chad Reed will run. Guts and No Toil make only the best. So visit gutsracing.com and notoil.com and step up your game, Motoheads.
Main Event Moto Podcast.
We'll get to the 10-year-old year, so this is when things start really looking good. And again, you went 130 or 1 DNF 1 for that night, so you knew the speed and everything was there. The 10-year-old year, though, and this is a weird one because normally, like in amateurs, your old year, everyone like preps for their old year because that's their chance. Your 10-year-old year, you're still a year young in the class, but you win Loretta's that year. Third in one class and first in the other. I mean, how did that feel? How did the prep come for that one? Even like the regional, I mean, was it brewing? Did you know like, okay, I'm ready?
Yeah, I think that was like a little bit of a breakout. Like I said, the year before I showed like, hey, I can win, but that next year, it was kind of crazy how it all went about. It, earlier that year, I was riding 85 at that point, actually, I think after my 9-year-old year, I had gotten picked up by Red Bull, but it was before me and Barsha were the first two guys to get sponsored by Red Bull, but it was before we could actually brand ourselves with Red Bull.
Right, because of the age thing. So it was like, you were like, I think Jesse Nelson had a little bit of that too at one point.
Yeah, but their deal was they got us a membership at MTF to go. And at that time I was still full-time in school, and MTF was like 12 hours from my house in North Carolina. But we went there to do some suspension testing with, at that time it would have been, I guess, Factory Connection. And I was riding an 85. I was actually on a Cowie just that a local dealership had kind of helped me out with, and because I think I was sponsored by maybe it was Champion Cycle at that point, but I was just way too small to ride the KTM 80. Like back then they were, the really tall bike, and so anyway, long story short, I crashed on my 85 at MTF and ended up breaking my femur, and this was like 2 weeks probably before the Texas Nationals. It was not ideal timing, and which was right around the areas. And I remember going to like the last area we could possibly go to, and doing I think as long as you do, I don't know what the rule is, like you can go to the regional as an alternate or whatever. And so we ended up doing that, and then I went to the regional, and I remember like kind of barely making it. Like I'm pretty sure I got like the last spot in both those classes, and then was just able to, I guess, heal up. And at that point, like I said, I think I had taken things a bit more serious, and had some sponsors that were on board and stuff. And that year as a 10-year-old was a great year. I won a title, and then I remember. And the other one, was pretty close to winning a title too. So it was a pretty, for at that time in my career, it was like pretty cool story to, go from a broken femur and I broke it in like 4 spots at age, say 10, is a pretty big deal.
That's dramatic for a little guy. And then like you said, to barely even get in. Then you have the summer to kind of heal up, but I can imagine just going there and being like, well, let's just get through this year. It's your young year, whatever. So
and that was the cool thing. I don't think, even my dad, maybe he did, but I don't think either one of us really expected to go there and win. It was more to just kind of do our best.
Just do your thing. Now, okay, I'm going to list these names. These are some of the names that are in the class. And when I read this, I laughed. AC is in there. Colt Nichols, Justin Hill, Thomas Covington, Aaron Plessinger, Jordan Smith. All in your 65 age. Do you even do you remember all of them back then? Do you remember these guys?
Yeah, oh yeah. It was funny. Like me and Colt battled all week. Actually, I do remember that. I mean, I battled with AC. Actually, that was the first. I'd say that year was the first year since like 50s that me and AC were able to kind of battle. But I remember actually the guy to beat was Colt. Like he was the one that I had to take care of.
Did he have 2 earrings with the cross in one and a diamond in the other? Not at that time.
I don't think that year. No, not
the next year on 85s is when he got him. Yeah, so Colt's in there, and then even Justin Hill, which, dude, did you even know who he was? He's an Oregon guy. Like,
no, so the funny thing about Hill was, obviously Josh is actually I don't know if you got time, but pretty funny story. Josh was always 175.
Yep.
And Justin started off as being 175.
And you're like, look, bro.
No, we went to a race in Vegas at the NMA, and the NMA,
You did the World Mini?
Yeah, I did the World Mini.
Oh, bro, did the wind blow you off the track into the mountain?
Broke my collarbone.
Oh,
broke my collarbone, man. I was out. But so anyway, I was on a Pellini, and at that time, Justin was also on a Pellini. This was probably our 7-year-old year.
Yeah.
And they assigned me 175, and they assigned him 75. So the whole time, that whole week, everyone's getting us confused. Mm-hmm. And I actually got sponsored by Smith and I think Alpine Star at the time, because the guy came by and dropped stuff off thinking it was Justin Hill, and it was me.
You're like, thanks, bro. Throw it in the trailer.
Yeah. So it was kind of funny. But yeah, I mean, I remember Justin was always really good. I think he took, a little bit of time off as he got older and then came back. But yeah, I mean, we were all battled hard, man. It was a good age
What
group.
about AP back then? Like, was he still the goofy, just goofball that he is now? I mean, was he always that way?
Yeah, ever since I remember. I mean, I remember him meeting, back on 65s, and he was the same old goofball
just
kid.
Skinny, goofy, tall kid, just
I don't
smiling
see
and
him
everything.
Ever at like regionals, Loretta's. He really only did like the East Coast Nationals, and because I guess he was doing GNCC stuff still then too, or whatever. So, but yeah, I mean, it's cool. Like all the kids or people I race against now, I remember being kind of the same way as now,
Yeah. What about Jordan Smith then? Because he's a North Carolina guy too, right?
Yeah. We grew up racing each other quite a bit. He's actually racing age a year younger. But, I mean, he was always around North Carolina, always racing there. We would do our fair share of racing together. But, same. It's funny when you look at, like, I always look at photos. Like, I was wearing a Simpson kit. I was Simpson head to toe. And him and AP were Moose head to toe. So it's like, you look back and we're just like, dang, we should have upgraded our swag a little bit.
Yeah, it's definitely better now. But is it funny now, even being on the gate of a Supercross and knowing like you've won titles now? Justin Hill's won a title. AP's won multiple titles. AC's won an outdoor title, and you got single-digit guys. AC's number 9, AP's number 7, you're number 2. Yeah. Is it weird looking over and being like, man, I've known you guys since before puberty? Like, we were little kids. Is it weird sometimes, or do you just so caught up in your life that you forget?
I think this year was pretty a reminder of, like, like you said, me and AC have been racing each other since literally 6 years old, so it's like, that was where it really, I think, like my first year pro, it hit when a bunch of our rookies around the same age, or the first 2 years, where I was like, man, these are kids that I battled with, but you unfortunately, I think you just quickly forget because there's so many fast guys in the pros, and that you kind of have to adjust your focus. But no, I think this year, like I think it was San Diego, it kind of hit me like when me and AC went 1-2. You know, like when you put that in perspective, like man, you know, we're at that night we were at the top of the sport, and
you battled on P-dubs.
Yeah.
That is very weird. Before I go on, then let's touch on the AC thing. There's this overly hyped rivalry because there's this guy in the sport who just won't let it go. You're welcome. That's me. What's the deal really with the rivalry? I've heard from people that it's not really a real one. You just battled as kids, and I've heard that there is kind of one. And I mean, what is that? Is it just a typical two kids that grew up and had to race each other their whole life thing?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, to be honest, it was more of like, I guess from our end, you know, we were, I don't know how to say it politically correct. We were like I'd say blue collar, you know, any sponsor we could get was awesome. And it just seemed like AC, you know, from age 6, you know, I remember him, you know, doing really well at Mini-O's and getting a ton of support from, you know, all these cool sponsors. And so which was great for him. I mean, he deserved it and, you know, won a lot of races. So it was really, I think, just tough on more so my dad and even myself, knowing like, man, you know,
like not that it wasn't deserved, but he had the hype, he had the support, and you didn't. It was one of those things where it's like, damn, man.
Yeah, you know, I think it was just one of those things like whether, you know, at 9 years old, he had some of the best sponsors in the pits, you know, getting
and you were wearing Simpson
all the stuff, and I'm wearing Simpson, getting a bike half off from a dealership, and you know, he's getting first and I'm getting second, and you know, I beat him more, I'd say, until 80s or even 65s a little bit. Like obviously 50s, he was the guy, and then 65s was like you said, as you saw, my year that I kind of did my thing, and I'm sitting there still paying for dirt bikes, and he's got, you know, 100 cowies lined up outside his badass rig. And so I think for me, it was just more like always wanting to just beat him, you know, is what it really came down to.
Did you know your own financial situation growing up too? Did you know like things were tough?
I had no idea.
So you didn't know that stuff yet?
No, my dad, I mean, I'll give it to him. Like he worked his ass off, and so did my mom, you know, and they really did. And like I said, I didn't know. I just knew that, I mean, I knew I wasn't getting bikes for free. I knew I was paying for suspension and paying for engines and all that. Obviously, I never knew what those costs were, but you know, I think until really my big break was when I did go to 80s, when I actually got a deal with Honda. And so, I mean, like you said, I think we did have some altercations. I mean,
just the natural two competitive kids
got into it a fair share of times. And so I think that was the thing. And then, you know, that obviously escalated later into my career where, which I'm sure we'll touch on, but it turned into like me not having any professional rides and people telling us, you know, oh yeah, this kid's just signed a 6-year deal or whatever it was with PC for hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it's like, dang, you know,
like still.
So, I think that's where it kind of stemmed from. Like I have nothing but respect for AC. He's, you know, a champion. He's worked his ass off to get where he is. I think it was more just like that underdog from me of always just wanting that attention that he was getting, or the sponsors, or the you know, whatever you want to call that.
I get it, bro. You were wearing Simpson. I mean,
yeah,
like, dude, you're gonna be bitter.
Yeah. Well, and I think, like you said, whenever you finally beat your rival, if you will, especially the professional level, it's like you want to be heard a little bit.
Right.
I think that's more what it.
Yeah, we'll
what
get
it
into
stems from.
the later stuff with, you know, your pro offer, or like you said, lack thereof. But let's get back on to the timeline. You said you got the Honda support, so your 11-year-old year, you forego the 65 class, even though you're small, so you probably could fit it, but you get the Honda support. But this is where I was confused is because I remember seeing you first on the 150, but you did ride a Honda 85 first before you.
Yeah. So my 11-year-old year, I was riding Honda 85s, as well as the KTM 65. Obviously, because Honda didn't make it, but then that was when they did the 150, and they wanted that big push of riding the 150. So I really didn't ride the 85 much. I think the only time I rode it after my 11-year-old year was, I think there was certain races that you couldn't ride a 150 in the 85 class, then there was races that you could. So that was more or less why I only rode the 150, and then I rode the 150 in the super mini class and stuff like that. So like my 12, 13-year-old year, I was still pretty small. So I mean, I never even got on a big wheel until I think when I was 14. So I just tried to race the 150, and that's what I did for those 12 and 13-year-old year.
So when you first went to Honda, though, was KTM not involved? I'm just thinking, if I'm seeing you as a 10-year-old winning Loretta's on a KTM 65, if I'm KTM, I'm like, I'm wanting this guy. Like, did they not have something?
That's a question I've had for years now.
Really? You ride for him now. Have you ever asked Roger?
I know. No, I've given him shit.
Hey, Raj, you had me on 65s, bro.
No, I mean, I don't know. And that's what I think, that's maybe why, and looking back, like, I think that's what's made me the racer that I am. And just that, I don't know if you want to call it arrogance or chip on my shoulder, but that's where it all stems from. I mean, it just seemed like no matter what I did, as an amateur, there was always, a struggle or
right.
And everyone doesn't. I mean, everyone has that spot in their amateur career where it just doesn't seem like anything's going right. But like I said, it was tough when I would go and win amateur national championships across the U.S. and, beat some pretty dang good guys and really not get what.
Right. I mean, it's like you were doing. Are you there?
Yeah.
Are you there? Sorry, there we go. So it's like you were doing what was needed to get the deals, but then not getting the deals. And then, I could see this is a repetitive thing. I could see that kind of like building that chip, like you said, because it's like, it's not like you were doing 5th place, where's my deal? You're like winning, where's my deal?
Yeah.
So,
exactly.
Okay, so no KTM, you go Honda, and how was that with JGR? Were they involved with the Honda thing from the beginning?
Yeah, so not at the beginning. The beginning was, that one was straight up. They signed me. I mean, like I said, Red Bull, I had just signed with Red Bull the year before, and then when I had gone to the 85, I got a legit Honda deal. I think it was like, my first year I was stoked. I got like 4 bikes, and that year I did really well. And then Red Bull kind of pushed Honda like, hey, you need to get this kid for the long haul. So that's when they gave me like a few-year deal, I think, into the super mini classes. And I was a legit American Honda guy. Like I was. Like
Barsha was, right?
Yep. Getting bikes, parts, contingency. I was on their amateur team, which was awesome. And that was one of the things they wanted was, the 150 to be represented well and stuff like that. And at that time, I had gotten sponsored by Thor, which was sweet. Red Bull was official. So things were getting going, and then and I was always factory connection, and then at that time I was still paying for my suspension at factory connection. So JGR wanted to start up a program for amateurs they wanted to do engines and they wanted to do suspension. And I was a kid from North Carolina. They're a team and a company out of North Carolina, and they approached me and just said, hey, we want to do your stuff for, your 150, and would you be interested? And we're like, heck yeah, absolutely. So that's where that kind of stemmed from. And that was, I'd say, my 14-year-old year. Because in 13, Red Bull was actually working with MDK to give me engines, but then MDK ended up, I believe, going out of business or stopping doing engines or whatever it was. So that's what kind of lined up to that JGR thing. And then that's what was awesome. Like, it was sweet for me. Like, they built me some sick engines, some good suspension. I could test with them. You know, I was riding in the summers with their pro guys, and like, it was really cool. And then, that 14-year-old year, I think I won. I know I won one title at Loretta's, and then another woulda, shoulda, coulda. But I think I had gone like 2-1, and I was leading the last moto, and I landed on a lapper with like 2 turns to go and crashed and couldn't get my bike picked up. And long story short, I think I ended up getting second.
You won. You won Super Mini 1 and got second in Super Mini 2 that year, and that was again on the 150. Did you like that bike? I mean,
at the time I really did. You know, I was still pretty small. I fit it well, and JGR did make a really good bike that year. And I think I had still never ridden a Super Mini, so I didn't know, like, to be honest, I felt like I was at a very competitive level until after the fact, when I actually got on a legit 112, and I think they were a little better, for sure.
Well, it even seems like
was a little slow.
It seems like the 150 thing kind of faded out a little bit. Even in recent years, Hunter Yoder, Carson Mumford, they've got these kids on them, and then they get right off of them, almost as if.
Yeah.
And maybe you were just riding the piss out of the thing, but I think of full blown built 112s, they're a lot.
It's
faster.
the way to go.
They scream,
they
man.
are.
Especially now. I don't know, dude. Max Volan, have you seen his bike?
Yeah.
Unreal. But so
exactly.
You're doing good on the thing, but then the result that stands out to me is in 2011, you get third in the Super Mini, but you get 32nd in Schoolboy. But I looked at the results, and it's DNF for DNF. But where my confusion is what were you on? Because you weren't on the Super Mini. So were you on a 250F in that class?
Yeah. So that year, I had grown quite a bit, and I was ready to kind of be on the big bike. But Honda, had kind of hired me to be a Super Mini guy. So we were kind of fighting with them, like, hey, I was actually on like you know how it goes, your last year Super Mini. I was on like a huge seat with like 3-inch stacks in my handlebars and like just high-rise bars, and I was pretty big on the dang thing.
Yeah.
And they said, hey, no, you can't race it. And they had given us a 50F, just a stock one, just to kind of have around.
Main event moto.
Look good? Check. Protection? Check.
Fly Racing has had the gear game on lock for years, but the Formula helmet has taken Fly to another level. They didn't just make a high-quality helmet, they redefined the standard for the most important piece of safety equipment on a rider's body.
Use your head and protect your head. Run the Fly Formula helmet.
Then cover the rest of your body in Fly's Evolution and Kinetic gear lines.
Easy decision.
If you're a true Motohead, then Motosport.com is your only choice when it comes to OEM or aftermarket parts for your bike. And when it comes to servicing your bike or giving it the punch you need to perform, it's EMT Racing. With Motosport.com, you can get everything you need for your bike with great pricing and ridiculous speed on shipping. And with EMT, it's simple. Take your bike to the experts.
2020 is the year EMT takes over the performance world. If you don't know, now you know.
Your Bat Bros choose Motosport.com and EMT Racing, and you should too. Motoheads, do you want to stand out on and off the track? Make sure to check out Viral Moto for your jersey lettering and apparel needs. That's viralmoto.com.
Because having a blank jersey is about as bad as Vincent's golf game.
And when it's time to get a screen printing project done for your business or personal use, you have one choice. It's screenprintingdone.com.
Neil is the man. You know those Main Event Moto sweatshirts you're wearing? Yeah, Neil at Screen Printing Done did those.
You know that sick new Viral Moto shirt you're wearing? Yeah, Neil did those too.
We like to look good. That's why we choose Viral Moto and ScreenPrintingDone.com.
All American Chevrolet in Killeen, Texas is a proud supporter of Main Event Moto and invites all the Moto heads to experience the difference for all of your Chevy sales and service needs. Mention Main Event Moto and get 50% off your next oil change and a front-end alignment at no charge. Remember, whether you're hauling your bikes to the weekend track, trail, or race, or commuting to the job that pays for your moto habit, we have the truck to get you there in style. Visit us online anytime at ChevyKilleen.com. That's all American American Chevrolet of Killeen. Chevy, find new roads.
Main Event Moto Podcast.
I ended up racing Super Mini 1, and then I was going to race Schoolboy 2 on a stock 250F, and that's what I ended up doing. And yeah, Super Mini 1, I just got beat straight up. I think I got third, and I think Jordan Smith won that year. And then, or actually AC did. I think AC did. But anyway, Schoolboy 2, I crashed on the start, the first one. Didn't finish, then had 40th gate pick, and I remember that fourth place was actually a pretty good ride. I remember I had a terrible start, and that class was pretty stacked that year. Got fourth. In the last moto, I was actually running second, and my stator went out in the bike, so that's was
how hard
that year.
How hard was that to ride a Super Mini that you're obviously putting a big seat, big bars, and then a 250F, which I'm imagining to you is just like heaven, right? Just feels so good. I mean, that just seems like that'd be a little on the frustrating side for you, knowing that, yes, you have to do it, but while you're there, you're now getting beat by some guys that you beat the year before, but you're on a bike that you know is like you're screwed on. So was that a little frustrating?
Yeah, no, for sure. It was difficult, to be, trying to ride two different bikes. You have to kind of ride them so differently. One being me tall and riding a gear low and, revving the crap out of it, and then getting on the 250 and actually being pretty small and, kind of not intimidated of it, but definitely respectful of it.
So literally not fitting anything right. Too big and too small, and having to go back and forth, where one, you're just revving the piss, you won't let off. The other one's got something. So, I mean, I could see the frustration, and then this might be a hard question to ask, but I'll ask it. That year, with those results being a little less than par for maybe your standard of where you were the year before, does that come into play when it comes to maybe not getting a pro deal the next year? Because that's when you moved to Yamaha, right?
Yeah, I think so. But honestly, that whole year in the Super Mini class, I had won a lot of championships. I was winning pretty much everywhere. And then it was over the summer, I just grew those few inches. And it was right before regionals. And my dad just had me do the regional to get actually more track time in Schoolboy 2. And I made it. And so it wasn't even a thought until 3 weeks before the race.
Oh, okay.
And so I think that was a little bit to do with it, for sure. And at that time, Bobby Reagan was, after the Super Mini the year before, he was interested. And so I think that just kind of got my dad's wheels turning on things. And then at that time with Honda, we were, thinking that, man, there was an opening to be, the Geico AMSOIL, and, hey, I'd been on Honda this whole time. And so we're thinking hey, that's kind of where we're going to be headed.
Right. Are you thinking you're going to follow kind of Barsha's plan, which is Honda's right up in, right into factory connection?
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's where even my dad, my deal was up. My deal was up that year after Loretta's, and it was okay, what's next? He went to American Honda, and at that time they were really cutting back again and pretty much said hey, it's either AMSOIL Honda or we can't do anything. So that's where it was tough, because I was in that weird kind of transition year of about to be on big bikes full time and kind of needing anything.
I mean, that's when you need the most support of this whole journey. That would be the time when you need it the most, especially with your pro career coming in a year or two,
Yeah. So we had actually reached out to Yamaha because, like I said, the year before, Bobby Reagan was ready to do something, and we had kind of been holding him back for a year. And then, I went around and tried to get a Team Green deal, and they really didn't want to do it because at the time, because of, AC was their guy. And then, we had talked to Yamaha about maybe just doing a 1 year deal or whatever, an amateur, let me prove myself type deal. And then maybe trying to go from there. But anyway, there wasn't anything available. I remember, Suzuki was kind of, their amateur thing was done. Orange Brigade was like just kind of getting going and wasn't really that sweet. And so we ended up kind of just choosing that route of like really hoping we would get the Geico thing. I mean, I remember even after Loretta's, I went to a tryout for the Geico team and rode the bike, and that I thought went well. And then at the time, Red Bull was really trying to keep me no matter what they could do.
Right.
So they were really trying to get me on either KTM or TLD.
Right.
And I actually went out and rode the TLD bike, and I thought that actually went pretty well too. And I guess, nothing really happened. Like they weren't I think it was more of a favor to Red Bull. Like I don't think they really had much interest. And then, I was trying to get something with KTM. And like I said, it was Orange Brigade. And the only thing that they could tell me was like, hey, if you sign to Orange Brigade, and you do well, there might be a shot on you for J-Star.
Right. I remember that team.
Yeah. And at that time, I wasn't that keen on that
Right.
team either.
You ever look over the Geico guys or the TLD guys and just be like, what up?
Oh, yeah. No, I will. I mean, yeah.
I mean, I would. I'd probably, every time I saw him, I'd be like, hey, remember that? Remember that time?
Yeah. No, it was like you said, I think it was unfortunate timing of my results. And then just that year and alone, I should have went ahead and just rode the big bike and done schoolboy, but I was kind of fulfilling my contract. And then my whole goal from the word go was I wanted to do a full year B and then go pro at Hangtown.
Right.
Do a few of the amateur nationals in the A class. And I do think that was something that most of the teams I think were also a little scared of, because I had kind of told Geico, and I actually also even went into Mitch's office and just kind of asked him like, hey, do I have a shot? And, even with him, it was kind of like, sorry. So, that's
wow.
That's the
So everybody passes on Coop, and then there's old Bobby Reagan, who's like, let's go.
Yeah.
And but I have to imagine at that time it sounds okay, but that team didn't have much success yet. Like they weren't a powerhouse, that's for damn sure. So what are you stoked but also scared a little?
Yeah, and that was kind of the reasoning behind of like not doing it the year before was
right.
like, they're a good team, but like you said, I think they had really hardly gotten any podiums and like maybe won a race or two within the last, however long they had been racing.
Right.
So, and even with Bobby, it was like the deal I actually had even until then was only a year as an amateur and then a year as a pro. So even that was still
short
not
leash.
ideal. Definitely. Yeah. It was like, hey, I had to prove myself that first season of outdoors.
Was he cool with your plan that you wanted? Because I mean, it is what you did. You went to Loretta's in the B class. You won one title, got second in the other, and then your first pro race ended up being Hangtown. So was he cool with what you guys wanted to do? I mean, that was fine with him?
Yeah, I think for him, like looking back, he was in a bit of a transition year. Like, he had that, like when I was amateur, it was that Star Valley deal where it was like just a lot of chaos going on.
Mm-hmm.
And then, the year I was going to do Hangtown, they split, and it was like he had signed Jeremy, and it was like, we're going to have Jeremy, Cooper as our new guys, and then, they had Cunningham. And it was like, these are our three guys. Let's, give these three all of our attention. And I think Jeremy and Kyle did Supercross, and then they wanted me to do outdoors to be like a third guy on the team. And
right.
So it really fit well with my plan, and Bobby was on board with it. He felt like that was a smart thing to do, especially because the funny thing was, like, after Loretta's that year, I went to Minios, and I think I won 9 out of my 10 classes.
And that would be an A though, right? Because after Loretta's,
No,
you
that
went
was
A?
actually B.
Oh, you stayed
That
B.
was B.
Okay. Okay.
After Loretta's, because my first race was only was Schoolboy 2 at Loretta's, and then I went to the B class at Minio's, and I did B at Minio's, Spring Nationals.
Yep, I'm a year off. So you got on the Yamaha, went B, did really well, did good, and then now I'm back on the timeline. Okay,
yeah. Then raced A at Minio's and the Spring Nationals, and then it was on the Hangtown.
Wow. Again, did you get done with the Loretta's your last year? You never did the A class. You did the B class. I remember seeing you at the Dodge National here at Hangtown, and that had to have been September, so like a month or two after you were number 175 on a Yamaha. The reason I was even there was Stank Dog borrowed my 08 Honda 450, and I know you guys were battling because he was hole-shotting every moto on it, and I remember watching you battle through, and I remember giving him a hard time, like, dude, you're going to let this amateur B rider beat you? And he's like, dude, that kid's fast. And I'm like, I know, but still, you're on an 08 Honda 450, you hole shot every moto. But that's the first time I saw you in that big bike. So this is now, did you just start racing amateur and local A stuff as you're waiting for Hangtown?
That was kind of the cool thing that Bobby let me do. Like, he gave me, I think it was a 250F with maybe a head and an exhaust. He gave me 2 of them and said, hey, I want you to go race as much as you can.
Wow.
And go, because I had just got done with school. I was officially on the team, and he wanted me to go race amateur day at every national that I could. So we did that, and then that turned into like, hey, we could do these last 3, and they had money races, and then it was like, we did this whole schedule that whole winter of like, hey, what can we hit for money? You know, It was me and my mechanic, and I would give him 10% of whatever I made, and dude, we hit them all.
Wow.
I mean, it was
so all over the
cool.
place. Racing. This is just A stuff. Looking for money races, winter series, whatever existed, because you're going into Hangtown to make the debut, right?
Yeah, and that was that race we did was Bobby wanted me to ride the Hangtown track.
Yep.
They were still Star Valley, which, you know, Chad is from up there, and they said, hey, you should come out, do this race. And yeah, it was awesome. Freak. I think it was 3 moto format, and they paid well each moto.
Yeah.
It was good.
Yeah.
Good times, that's what I always say is the money races
before it got real, right?
Yeah.
No Supercross prep or anything that year? Did you, during that off season, this transition from B to A before Hangtown, did you even ride any Supercross, or was that just put off?
I actually did Monster Cup.
That's right. That's right.
I actually won Monster Cup that year, so that was pretty cool. And then, really the only Supercross I had done was the year before that. Even I went on that Super Mini.
I remember seeing you there.
Did Monster Cup there, and so yeah, I mean, not really. I rode a little bit like back east at south of the border before Monster Cup, and then actually after Monster Cup, I had just started really enjoying riding Supercross, so I kept riding it whenever I could. Like if I went to a south of the border, or if we went to a money race and that week we would stay somewhere, and if there was a Supercross, I would go ride Supercross. And they'd kind of give me like a hybrid set of suspension that was stiff enough to
just
do what I needed
to get some laps in. So not like a program, but like, hey, get some laps in when you want to have fun and learn it a little bit.
And then it was pretty cool. Like I went to Stewart's house actually like 2 weeks before Minio's, and that was his off season, and he let me ride with him and Malcolm and on their full on track. So that was pretty cool. And then it was an experience, man. It was. I felt like I was riding good, and I got the hang of Supercross. But yeah, wow.
What was it like watching him? What was it like watching him at that age where you're on a big bike now, so you understand what big bikes can do, but he's doing things that big bikes shouldn't do?
Yeah, no, exactly. That's what made me even bigger fan.
Yeah, he was gnarly. What was Malcolm like, man? Just fishing still?
Yeah, I think that was the year Malcolm was on J-Star.
Yep.
So he was fine. He was finding his groove, and he was honestly riding really well that year. Like from what I remember, being at the track and stuff, and I think he did pretty good on that bike.
Okay, a couple broad questions before we end this. Looking back, is there anything that you look at as a decision that was made that you just? I mean, I don't know if you're like me. I don't regret anything. It's just part of my. It is what it is. But is there anything that you go back and go, wish I would have done that different at any time as a kid, as an amateur?
Honestly, not really. I mean, I felt like my amateur career and even growing up, like I took racing as a secondary to, my everyday life, like school. And like I said, even up until I signed with Bobby, I was playing team sports my whole time. So, obviously racing was important. It was something that I loved, but I look back and think like how cool it was to live a pretty normal childhood. And, no one knew me in my town as a racer. They just knew me as Cooper. And so that was really cool. And I mean, sure, I guess you would try to fix maybe some of the things that went bad. But I mean, at the time, there was, even to this day, like I wasn't stoked to sign with Star. I'll be honest. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's funny how it all works out and how it was the best thing that could have ever happened to me, and I've won 3 championships and a hell of a lot of races with with that team. And, I feel like I was part of making them the dynasty that they're becoming, which is cool. And I mean, just being on that team now and like the lessons I learned, the people around, like it was just couldn't ask for anything else. And so I'd say that was the only thing at the time where, I look back now and say, man, that was the best thing that ever happened. But, say 2014 or so, I was definitely like, man, I just hope I can do good enough here to try to go elsewhere.
So I hope I can do good enough to bridge myself somewhere else. Oh, wait, I'm going to go on and win 3 titles here. But at the same time, and I don't know if this is part of that decision-making or looking back, but man, that bike was not great, and then they did knock it out of the park. Like, you got there at the right time, man. That thing
exactly.
You got the good bike when they fixed it.
Yeah, and even in 2013, like my rookie season of outdoors, that was when it was still carbureted. We were the last carbureted bike.
Yep.
But that thing was honestly, it was a pretty good bike. Like it was fast as shit. It handled pretty good. And I mean, like, hell, my first race at Hangtown, I got 5th, which was freaking awesome at that point in my career. And then, that next year was when that new bike came out. But even that first year, like the bike was awesome, but we didn't have parts for the longest time. I mean, even in Supercross, like I did well in Supercross in 14, but I mean, I remember like December was the first time we went engine testing. And other than that, I was on a stalker.
Right.
So, the bike got progressively better really quick. And I feel like Star really were the ones to develop that 250 into what it is,
Yeah, I mean, again, their transition into that new model was good, and then with what Jeremy did, and then what you did, like you guys changed the course of that whole bike. The whole bike. Now look at it.
And that's what I think at the time was cool. Like even Jeremy, he was kind of the same way as an amateur, very overshadowed. I mean, even myself, I never even knew who Jeremy Martin was until later in his amateur career. So I think it's cool that we both have that that Bobby saw that we both had that little bit of underdog fight with that overshadowed and took a chance on both of us. And obviously he saw something great in both of us, and we were able to, both win championships for him, which is pretty neat.
Yeah, it was good for you guys and paid off for him too. That was some good moves. Another kind of broad question, knowing what you know about the experience that you had in amateurs, and then also seeing the way things have shifted now where these kids are getting 10-year deals. Me personally, I think things are kind of gone the wrong direction there. Do you agree with that, or is there another angle from your experience that you see of where amateur racing is either doing things right or wrong?
I mean, that's a very tough one to answer. I mean, it's crazy to me knowing how much rookies and kids that definitely blows my mind. I mean, like I touched on earlier, mine was I had a year as an amateur and then a year as a pro. And that year as an amateur, I didn't make a salary. If I made contingency money, that's what I made. And, my first year pro, I can guarantee I wasn't making what a going rate is now.
Did you feel like that fueled you, right? Because you weren't making, it's like, I feel like if an amateur's making money, they have a sense of I made it, and that's a wrong time to have that feeling because you didn't make it. So is that...
And it's tough because everyone, like you said, I think that's a tough thing that everyone looks at. And that was something that my dad actually did well at installing in my head was like, dude, just because you're turned pro, you ain't shit. Like there's a whole lot of stuff more to accomplish than just becoming pro. So
right.
I think for me, that's what made it, made me always want to get better and do things right. And I mean, honestly, even now, like at the time I turned pro, looking back, like just the one good thing I will say with most of the amateurs coming up is just the guidance that they have access to now is unreal.
You didn't have much when you were growing up, right?
I mean, I got lucky. My second year with Star of, Swanee becoming my trainer and giving me a riding program, a training program. I mean, before that, I was eating pizza and going to the track and saying, what are we doing today? I guess I'm just going to ride. And, me and my mechanic, we're just riding. So I think that's one aspect that has definitely helped. But yeah, it is crazy to think that, kids are getting signed on 85s at a young age. And I just think a lot can happen in someone's career. Some people really excel on 85s and don't necessarily excel on 250Fs, but I do think the cool thing about once you do get on big bikes, I do think the gap bridges as far as the bikes are all pretty good, even if you're on an amateur team or whatever. Like, that was something that I liked that Bobby did looking back. Like, he didn't give me good bikes. He just gave me, like I said before, a head and an exhaust and
go race.
That's what I was racing. Yeah. And I think that was good too, because you weren't, and I don't know what the other teams do. I mean, I'm sure there's some better parts going around and stuff like that now, but I think the cool thing about big bikes is, that's when you kind of see a rider's true ability. So that is crazy to think, before you even get on big bikes, you can have a 5-year contract or whatever the case may be. And,
right.
Sometimes it works out. Sometimes it goes terribly south, which I think is tough. And, I think that's where, looking back, it was a little tough, with the short contract I had at first with Star, but it was one of those things where they were eyeing me out to make sure that they weren't going to
overinvest,
be wasting their time,
and just spend too much on someone that wasn't going to either fight or get it. And I agree with that. I think once you get on big bikes, it all works itself out. But I could still see from you just in your career, like the different times when you had reasons to be a little bummed. I feel like that happened at different times to where it kept building and building and building. And then, of course, the best thing ever probably is that you didn't get what you wanted when you got on a big bike. That was the right time for you to be bitter. It's one thing to be a little kid and be wearing Simpson, and be like, what the hell? But it's another thing when you're turning pro and you're like, look, I want to do this and I'm not getting off. I just feel like that's the best time for you to have something like that happen,
And that's what fuels my fire even to this day, is just, like you said, knowing that, hey, and I think that's just the attitude that I've had instilled in me is you always got to prove yourself. You're, as Ricky used to say, you're only as good as your last race. And I think being on both sides of that, like, being at the top of the sport and then being, an unknown with fighting for everything I needed and got. So I think it, like you said, I think it's installed some great qualities in me for sure.
All right, last question. North Carolina boy, there's a lot of fast kids around there. Tell me something funny about my guy Jacob Hayes growing up. I know he's a couple years older than you, but I know he was running around the same track. So tell me something funny about that guy.
Yeah, North Carolina growing up was cool. I mean, we did have a bunch of really, really good riders. If you go back and look at from Damon all the way till now, like we've always had some really good riders, and I think you'd be surprised of all the pros that are from North Carolina that are still racing today. But Jacob, he was always from the west part of North Carolina, so I didn't really see him all that much. But I just remember, he was KTM swagged out, and he would always wear this goofy, like, KTM fishing hat, and he had, like, his braces and stuff, and just looked like such a goofball. He had white Hanes socks, with Skechers, and just was always so proper looking.
What a dweeb, dude. Still a dweeb, too.
Yeah. I'm glad he grew out of those KTM hats.
Yeah, he's doing better now. But anyways, all right, Coop. Well, thanks again for doing this. And yeah, man, it worked out. It worked out all right.
Yeah, cool deal.
All right, bro.
Main event motor. Screw it. You know it by now.